Guys, it's Vandiezo back again for another card fight Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. So let's get this one started. Today's deck is Dimension Police, Zeal. So I originally hated Zeal back in like the old Limit Break days. In Zero I liked him because he could nuke fields and I kind of like nuke effects. And now he's back and he can bring things into the negatives very quickly with getting high power in it. So, pretty good card. So let's go ahead and get this started. First up, the starter today will be Little Hero Dracokid. No Zeal starter because they unfortunately did not reprint Zeal into standard, but it's still fine. Skilled Little Hero, 6k base, 10k shield as usual, and when it's wrote upon you get a draw card, and then if your opponent's Vanguards are greater than 1 or greater, you get a quick shield ticket. Basically, you go second, you get a draw out of it, you get a 5k shield that you normally discard. All around, it's just something that you would normally use regardless because you don't really have much choice. Then we run 6 draws, 2 being Furry Monster Mobanji, and the other 4 being Diamond Ace. I don't know why I autocorrected to eyes, but pretty much we got the draw PG, and then we got a regular draw. Then we run 6 crit, 4 being Diabattles, 2 being Justice Cobalt. It's just a balanced thing because I feel like you need more draws to, draw into, 1, your right chain, and then 2, constantly keep having resources to rest your board, shove stuff to soul. You just constantly need those resources, so more draws in and then crits. You get a lot of power already, might as well just use Force 2 and then the crits just put more force pressure on the rear guards or van. So either way, just 6 draws, 6 crits. And then we got the 4 heal, 4 being Grand Rescue. I try to make them all from different eras, Cosmic Hero to Dimensional Robo to Aliens. So let's go ahead and get this started. First up, we've got 2 copies of Commander Laurel. No sane person would run this, but no one said I was sane. So 6k base, 10k shield, act rear once per turn, counterblast 1 and rest 4 rear guards. Choose one of your units and until end of turn it doubles its power and it gets +1 crit. This is normally for the case where if you're playing against someone who you know can block a huge attack and you can possibly restrict Sentinels and you just have a bunch of rear guards but they can block those, call down the Glory Maker, I think it is, that can restrict Sentinels if you decide to put Glory Maker in this. Then use Laurel to rest everything but the Glory Maker and the Vanguard, obviously. Vanguard goes to, if it's on normal case, it should be 26 double critical. If you're on Force 1, that will definitely go higher. And then you just boost it with Glory Maker, lock down the Sentinels, bring their power down, and then just get more drives and more crits out of it. Just push your opponent into guarding. So it makes the numbers bigger for the Vanguard, and in the chance that you're not on Zeal, it makes it harder to guard the other grade 3. So, good card. 2 copies. 2 copies of Twin Order. Some may be wondering, why not 4? For the simple reason, I just don't think Twin Order is that useful in this deck. Because with playtesting, even when I ran 4, I never really used its effect. I was more or less just shoving it to soul or keeping it for guard fodder. So I think 2 is appropriate, but if you do call it to rear guard, when it boosts, it gets one of your Vanguards gets plus 10k power for each Force gift. I still think that's good ability regardless. It's just that I never really used it personally, because the Vanguard always minus 10 from the opponent, and then you always got extra drives, so I feel like the power wouldn't matter anyways, especially if they just had a PG, and if they didn't have a PG, your deck would have, especially with Laurel in it, you probably would have already been enough to hit over whatever's in their hand. So I don't think Twin Order's that useful, but he's still good enough to be in the deck. So I say 2 copies, not to be too clunky, but not to not see it. Next up, 4 copies of Heat Source Monster Genelaser. 8k base, 10k shield, active and a rear, once per turn rest a rear guard, and it gets plus 10k power to end of turn. So if you're not on Laurel, or if you don't have Laurel, you can just call this down, rest a useless rear guard that you're probably going to sub to soul anyways, give this thing a free plus 10, so then you're hitting for more units, and then you got more power out of it without having to just waste something. So 4 copies. 4 copies of Eye of Destruction Zeal. 8k base, 10k shield, auto van or rear when placed, look at the top 7, and then reveal up to 1 grade 2 or greater card with Zeal in its card name from your deck, and put it into your hand and shuffle it. And then it's named once per turn. So pretty much top 7, get a Zeal from one of those top 7. That's a grade 2 or greater, so you can't just search this out, and even if you could, it'd be a name once per turn, so you can't do it more than once. But you can still search for the grade 2 of the right chain, so you could essentially keep going with the right chain and just ride it, get pluses off it next turn, and then get pluses off it later with it being in soul. Or you can search for your grade 3 since you might be missing it in hand. Or you might just search for your grade 3 just to get more force gifts. Honestly, that's what I've done multiple times. I'll just search the grade 3 for a force gift. But either route, anyway, it's still good regardless because it gets to search for the things that you need. So 4 copies. 2 copies of Mass Police Grandeur onto grade 2s, 10k base, 5k shield, continuous rear. If your Vanguard's critical is 2 or more, this unit gets plus 5k power. There's only 2 of this because, unless you pick Force 1, you are almost guaranteed to pick Force 2 because I don't think you need Force 1 in this deck. So this thing hitting 5k power easily is gonna happen, but the problem is, it's just a 15k swing. That's all it is. There's no, boost. There's no other thing. It's just a 5k guard. I mean, Genelaser had 18k going for it. That's a 10k drop guaranteed unless they're on stuff like MLB or they're on a grade 4. But this thing is not necessarily the best, but it's not the worst either because it can work with the deck. So I say 2 copies, mainly just soul fodder, or if you need a rear guard that you just need to have because you don't want to throw down guard for it later, just call this thing down and it can be a small beater. So 2 copies. 3 copies of Miracle Dandy, 9k base, 5k shield, continuous Guardian Circle. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, gets plus 10k shield, putting it at 15. There is nothing in this deck that can minus during your opponent's turn, so unless you're playing a tag fight with Shiryuki, you are not going to be able to benefit fully off of this by just bringing them down in the negatives and then using this for a no pass. But it's still a good card because that's just a trigger guard. It is a 9k on rear, and that's all it is. But at least when it's in guard circle, it can be useful. I do not suggest calling this down to rear if you plan on using Zeal's abilities to its fullest capabilities, because then you are losing a 15k shield out of it. At that point, you should rather call a draw trigger, and at some reasons, you might want to call a PG for it. I've done it. I won the game because I called a PG just to use Zeal's skill and kept this in hand, and it worked. How? I don't know, but it did in the end. So 3 copies. 4 copies of Platinum Ace, 10k power, 5k shield. For the longest time, I thought this thing had a bow and arrow, but apparently it was just kicking someone. Continuous Vanguard Circle during your turn. It gets plus 5k power, putting it at a 15. And then auto rear when it attacks once per turn. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, if it's a grade 3 or greater with 30k power or greater, Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets plus 10k power and a crit till end of turn. You will never have a problem doing that. I mean, you might have a problem, if you're not using Force 1, you might have a problem putting the Vanguard to 30k before this thing attacks. Unless you just, shove everything else to Soul, then it'll be easy. But you're still guaranteed to get that Soul Blast off because this deck sells a lot of things to Soul. You could play this with any deck that Soul Blast to Hell Load, and you would never run out of Soul. You would just never, and you would be in the perfect situation. So 4 copies of Platinum Ace, because if you can't get him off, he adds pressure along with the Vanguard for critting. So 4 copies. And then 4 copies of our last grade 2, Devourer of Planets Zeal. 10k base, 5k shield. Act Vanguard or Rear Guard once per turn. Counterblast 1 and rest 2 rear guards. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and it loses 5k power to end of turn. And if you have an Eye of Destruction Zeal into Soul, draw a card. And then auto when rode upon by a grade 3. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and it loses 5k to end of turn. So pretty much that's just helpful. 1, when it's rode upon, you just get to neg 5 to your opponent, making it easier for you to hit this turn, especially if it's going to be a vanilla turn, you got mostly triggers in hand, and you kind of just want to call down something just to poke, then, you can use this just to minus power so that poke actually turns into a hit. Even if it ain't going to hit, it still forces out guarding power. Well, the other skill, thankfully being a rear guard skill as well as a vanguard skill, makes it a lot easier. You can just rest 2 units, minus a guaranteed 5, get a free draw out of it if you got the grade 1 in Soul. All around, it's really helpful. I honestly think you just need to search the grade 1 in your mulligan. Don't bother searching for anything else. If you want to search for the grade 3, you can. Just search for the grade 1, ride it, pray to God that you top deck into the grade 2, and then try to summon another grade 1 and then try to get a grade 3 out of it. But either way, really helpful. Minuses power, get you some draws, and then minuses more power. So 4 copies. 4 copies of Roaring Beast Audion. 13k base, Force Gift, grade 3. I really like this thing's look. Act Vanguard Circle once per turn. Soul Blast 1, grade 3. Put any number of your rear guards into Soul, and this unit gets plus 5k power and a crit till end of turn for each of those cards. And then Act Auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, Soul Blast 3 until end of turn. Your opponent would call cards from his or her hand. She must call 2 or more at the same time. So, pretty much, you are guaranteed to have the grade 3 in Soul if you just write the second. And honestly, you should. and then you can Soul Blast one, shove all of your rear guards to Soul again just so you get more Soul Charging power, and then plus, like, if you do 5, it's 15k with an extra 5 crits, putting this thing to 6 crits. If you're on Force 2, it will put it to 7 with about 28k power, if assuming that you only rode once, but if you did Force 1 and you rode twice, then it would be 48 power with 6 crits. So, you know, either way you're hitting for high crits, high power, and then you can also force them to throw down 2 or more cards in hand. It wouldn't really do much if they had a PG in hand, unless like they only had 3 cards left and you had another rear guard ready to go for a swing, and it would hit. But it still does a lot. It's not necessarily the best grade 3 backup in the world, but it's still a good grade 3 backup, especially when you want like most of the deck to be aliens, and what do you do? He is actually an alien, and he still does work, so 4 copies. 4 copies of Galactic Beast Zeal, 13k base, Force Gift, grade 3. I love this thing's art, it's beautiful as all hell. And auto Vanguard or Rear Guard, when placed from hand, look at top card, call it to rear, and if this unit's on Van, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and loses 5k power to end of turn for each marker on your opponent's circles. So unfortunately, that does not count towards Protect decks, if they're using Protect 1, because since that's not in a circle, you cannot minus power from it. But it's fine, because as long as they're using anything else but Protect and they went first, you can minus power from them, and even if they didn't go first, you still get to look at the top card and call it to rear. Unfortunately, it's an odd place from hand, so you can't just ride this, call the top card, oh look at that, it's another Zeal, use that thing skill, call another one, and then look at that, it's another Zeal, use that thing skill, call Eye of Destruction Zeal, which I'm 90% sure is an in-hand ability, and I'm just going to check that now. Yep, oh no, it's not a place from hand, so yeah, you can just call that one from deck with this thing's effect, then skill, look at top 7 for another Zeal, add that to hand, and then use the grade 2 Zeal skill, counterblast the rest of your field of grade 2 3s, and then just do that. But, thankfully, you can't do that, because that would be very annoying and get very hard to beat. And also, it's very hard to pull off, because that's mostly luck-based. And then act Vanguard Circle once per turn, counterblast one and put 1 or more rear guards into your soul. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguards until end of turn, it gets minus 10k power, and if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, and Devourer of Planet's Beast Zeal is in your soul, this unit gets plus 1 drive for every 2 cards put into its soul for the cost. So, possibility of quad drive with bringing your opponent most likely down to either 3k, assuming they haven't hit triggers this turn, 3k or 2k, maybe the negatives if you, depending on where you rode at, if you rode this after riding Planet Devourer Zeal, you minus 5 from the on place of what they on right, then you minus 5 from the on place of this thing, putting them down to 2, and then bringing them down to negative either 12 or 3, then yeah. But big numbers, especially with like Laurel, who can make it easier for you. A lot of crits if you put on Force 2, and then a lot of drive checks. And then the draws also help with those drive checks to get you more resources so you can do it again next turn. So yeah. And then we got gifts-wise, we got 4 gifts of both Force 2 and Force 1. Force 1 can be placed on Banner Rear to give something plus 10, and Force 2 can be also placed on Banner Rear, but it makes the original critical become 2. Force 1 can stack, Force 2 cannot. I honestly think Force 2 is better for this deck because you minus your opponent's power enough to where you shouldn't need more power to force out your opponent's hand, plus slowly dealing them damage, especially since you can't minus during their turn, would end up giving them enough counterblast to make a counterattack against you. I should know. I have lost because of that, and I've learned to never use Force 1 again with this deck unless I absolutely have to. But yeah. And then we got the Quick Shield, which is a on attack, or whenever you use attack, it gets plus 5k power to end of battle. And I question why it's not an actual shield, because it's literally called a shield and its art is also a shield. Why it's not an actual shield, I don't know, but that's how it is. And that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, donate to the Patreon, and I'll see you all in the next one. And my second channel is linked in the description below, so is my Twitch channel, and so is the Discord. So don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.